In the next series of lessons, we're going to learn how to use the titling tools within Final Cut Pro. Let's start with the basic title tool. You get to your titling tools underneath this drop-down menu called the Generators tab, and if you go to the bottom of the list, you'll see there's 6 different titles that you can create: crawls, lower thirds, outline text, scrolling text, regular text, and typewriter. Let's start by looking at regular text. The best way to work with text in Final Cut Pro is to load a generic template into your viewer and immediately place it into your timeline. Now we have a note in our timeline that we want to put a title graphic here at the very end of our show. So I'm going to go ahead, drag sample text directly to my timeline, line it up here with the marker, and let go. I'll shorten it a little bit to the left, just so they all end at the same time, and this is the important thing to remember. Once you've loaded it into your timeline, double-click on it to load it back into the viewer. I've seen a lot of editors load it into their timeline and then start working with the clip that's already in their viewer, not realizing they're not affecting the one in their timeline. Now, why do I bring it into the timeline before I load it back into the viewer? Simple. As I change my text, I want to see it against the background that it's going to be on. So I don't pick a color such as yellow, which is going to look awful against this sun. Once the clip is loaded back into the viewer, and you can tell this by the little dots down here, go ahead and click on the control panels. Now take note, we do have our title safe overlay turned on, and we talked about that in previous lessons. So as you work with any text in Final Cut Pro, always have this on and respect these edges and don't exceed them. In the control panel of the titling tool, simply type the text that you want to appear. In this case, we're going to type the title of the show, Running the Sahara, and simply hit the Tab key so we can move to the next text box. Once we do that, we'll see our text show in our Canvas window. Now you can pick any font that's available within your system folder. In this case, we're going to use Papyrus as our font. You can scroll down or simply hit the P key to quickly jump to the P's. Select Papyrus, and now we want to scale it a little bit bigger. So we'll go to the size, and I can scale it bigger, but be careful, do not exceed your title safe. If you want to have some fine-tuned control, you can either type in a number, in this case I'll type in 60 and hit return, or I can use the little triangles to the left and to the right of my slider. Now when working with text, it's often better to use bold type than plain type, because thicker text tends to flicker less than thinner text because of the interlacing of video. So let's go ahead, switch from plain to bold, and jump down to the bottom half of controls. I can align this center, left, or right. In this case, center is just perfect. I can also change the color exactly like we've changed it in previous lessons by clicking on this box here and selecting the color that I want. Now, red's not nice at all, so let's go ahead and undo and keep this white. I can also control the tracking, which is the space between letters, and the leading, which is the space between lines. I can control the aspect ratio, making the letters taller or shorter, but once again, the default is perfect. You should always keep auto-kerning on and use subpixels. Now, if I wanted this to stand out a little bit more, I would go over to the Motion tab and I'd put a little bit of a drop shadow on it. I could go down here and click on Drop Shadow, take a look at what happens in my timeline. Prior to adding the drop shadow, it's a perfectly light green render bar, which means it's going to play back fairly smoothly. As soon as I add a drop shadow, it has to do a lot more math. However, it looks a lot better. If I go ahead and hit the space bar and play it, it should play okay. Now you know the basics of working with the titling tool in Final Cut Pro.